Welcome back, everyone, to our October #HireMe 2021 guest speaker panel series hosted by BCJobs.ca. Every month, we have 3 special guest speakers from various sectors join our Q&A on what's new with their organizations and to talk a bit about the job market and hiring. My name is Chelsea Sweeney, the Director of Events for BC Jobs, and I'll be your host today. BC Jobs is Western Canada's biggest online jobs board. And in addition to this guest speaker panel series, we also offer annual virtual career fairs. Our next one will be in 2022, seeing as we had our most recent one last week. We also have our really cool Innovators podcast available for you to listen online. So before we get rolling here, I want to encourage the audience, so you guys, to type your questions for the panel speakers into the chat box, and we will get to your questions in a bit. Today, we will be offering a pitch event right before the audience Q&A. To participate in our pitch event, in the chat box, you can enter your name, your location, your area of expertise, and years of experience. And I will draw 3 of you for a 30-second pitch to tell our guest speakers about yourself. The person with the best pitch will receive a 30-minute resume and interview consultation with BC Jobs. So I'll remind you all again when it's time for our pitch event. Okay, so let's get some introductions going here. I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Annie McLeod, Head of People and Culture at Felix Payments. Annie, welcome to our panel. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, so I'm Annie. I am the Head of People and Culture at Felix. I originally am from New Zealand, but have lived in the UK for a number of years before moving to Vancouver. I'm a recent person to Vancouver, so still trying to understand the city myself. I've been in HR for 8-9 years now, seen it all. And to talk a bit about Felix, which is the reason I'm here. Felix is a fintech company, and what we are doing here is taking the technology that most mobile devices have and turning the tap to phone capabilities into payment terminals. It's something new that's never been done. So yeah, we're certainly innovating and creating something fun.
Awesome, Annie. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Next up, we have Louisa Yeung, Head of Corporate Development at PDFTron Systems. Louisa, tell us a bit about your backstory.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. So as Chelsea mentioned, I'm Louisa. I'm VP Corporate Development at PDFTron. I'm also a proud UBC Sauder alumni, and I started off my career at Deloitte in their corporate finance team within financial advisory, purely focused on sell-side mergers and acquisitions and capital raises for mid-market companies in Canada. And then afterwards, I moved to PDFTron to build out and lead the corporate development team in-house. So I'm responsible for spearheading our inorganic growth through global acquisitions of companies in our space. A brief overview of PDFTron before we get into things a little bit more. PDFTron, we're headquartered in Vancouver and we're backed by 2 private equity investors. We've actually been around for over 20 years now, and we're a leading global provider of document technology solutions. So really what that means is all types of document processing and workflow automation technology, such as editing, collaboration, conversion, viewing, really anything you can think of that you do work with documents, we are here to support and provide. And what we're really aiming for is we're a platform that drives digital transformation of industries towards a paperless environment with a series of high code, low code, and no code solutions. And our customers, they span across all type of industries. So we're really industry agnostic, and we serve everyone from small enterprises to Fortune 100 companies. And some names that you guys would all recognize would be ones such as Microsoft, DocuSign, Boeing. They're all customers that use our document technology. And so really excited to be here and to meet you all and spend the next hour or so with you guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Louisa. And thanks for giving us the down low on PDFTron systems. That was perfect. And another UBC alumni, although I didn't go to Sauder, but UBC. All right. And last but not least, we've got Martina Valkovicova, Assistant Dean at UBC Sauder School of Business. Martina, tell us a bit about your background.
Absolutely. And I'm joining the proud UBC grads. I'm a UBC grad myself. And I actually have to say that it was a very quirky story because I came to do my MBA here at UBC Sauder, and I was not planning to stay in education sector. I was having completely different plans, but I have to say that that MBA changed my life, and I've decided that I want to be in education. So before that, I've actually worked across 3 continents, Africa, Europe, and North America. So been in leadership positions for 23 years. And actually my job is to do this, what Chelsea, you have an event for, from dusk till dawn every day,
Wow.
giving career advice across industries, we've got a team of basically 38 people here in UBC Sauder who are actually helping students and alumni with their career development. So it's my bread and butter every day. So I'm really curious if some of my thoughts are going to be actually validated by Annie and Louisa on this call. But outside of that, UBC, as many people know, is a ginormous employer. We've got 15,000 faculty and staff, and there is constantly postings for people to join UBC. I've posted 2 jobs actually just last week with my own team, and I know there is a number of jobs posted with UBC Sauder right now. So we provide services to students both on the academic and professional side. So I saw some people interested in data analysts. Those are the types of jobs. We've got managers, BD. So it's a very big variety of the roles that UBC actually hires for continuously.
Wow, you sound very busy, Martina.
I like it though. It's a very interesting job to have because I've got the best of both worlds, the career development side, and then I get to work with the employers as well.
It sounds awesome. And thanks for giving us the stats on UBC as an employer. Okay, so now that we feel like we all know you 3 a little bit better, I've got a few of my own questions that I'm going to start us off with before we move over to the pitch event and our audience Q&A. These next questions are geared more towards hiring and interviews, but I've also thrown in a couple questions that I wanted to know about your companies and organizations. So I'll start off with Annie again. So Annie, Felix Payments, originally an Australian startup that moved headquarters to Vancouver, is now looking to make some noise in the North American market. Tell us about your current company growth and what your hiring targets are for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so acted in Vancouver. They did move up a couple years ago now. So we are sitting comfortably at about 28 people. But we are looking to double, if not triple, in company size by the end of next year. One thing that we are now looking for are software developers, trying to get those people on board, but we will be expanding that reach probably around January or February time.
Wow, that sounds super exciting. Okay, my next question here is for Louisa. So Louisa, PDFTron, also headquartered in Vancouver, just received a $71 million investment in 2019, which has led to 6 company acquisitions since then. Tell us a bit about this and how this affected company growth in the last 2 years.
For sure. So that $71 million investment in 2019 was from a US-based private equity firm named Silversmith Capital, and it really was helping us further accelerate our R&D, innovation, and strategic acquisition. So following the investment for the past 2 years, our growth really has been phenomenal. From a headcount perspective, we grew from a small team of 50 to about, close to actually 200 people now. Some of them are organic, organic hiring, but some of them are actually through our acquisitions as well. We've done 6 acquisitions in the past 2 years, very international, from the US to UK. We also recently did one in New Zealand. So we do have corporate offices in all of those countries now. And contrary to, I would say, a lot of industries, COVID actually impacted us in a very positive way and accelerated our revenue growth even more as companies started to go remote, and everyone was needing solutions to work on documents collaboratively in a remote environment online. So our strong growth, especially through COVID as well, it attracted interest from even more investors. And actually a few months ago, just in May, we received another large investment from a top tier tech investor in the world named Thoma Bravo. So it's definitely very exciting times for us at PDFTron. And honestly, to us, we feel that we are still just scratching the surface of what we can really do with our technology and our customers. And we are super excited to have these 2 investors on board to take us to the next stage.
Wow, it sounds like things are going really well for PDFTron. That's awesome. Okay, over to Martina. Here's a question for you. UBC Sauder School of Business, which has over 400 faculty and staff members in this department, and as you mentioned, 38 full-time staff on the Career Center team, is known as one of the world's leading business programs. This must mean that you have very high hiring standards. What are the various steps for applying to UBC Sauder, and how can someone make it to that final round of interviews? Any tips?
Oh, that's a very good question. I would say that it's a little bit different on the undergraduate and graduate side, where the undergrad side is more on the central UBC level, but there is quite a comprehensive application process, including video and essays and references. But I would assume that this audience is more mature audience, so it's more on the, maybe interested on the graduate side. And it's very similar. The applications are quite comprehensive. You go through an application in a tech system. You have to have a number of professional references. You've got to have a video why you want to come to Sauder, right? And I would say that you don't have to have it figured out. A lot of the times the students, the biggest pieces of advice I would say is that a lot of the students come and say, oh, I want to do this, even though they don't really want to, because they think that before they go to a grad program, they have to have it figured out. But that's not the case. That's why we have such a robust team that we can help people to actually figure things out and discover things. So just be honest, right, about what, that you are in a crossroad. And we've got a lot of those people. We've got maybe 3 different types of students who come to us. One is on a crossroad, stuck. They don't know what to do. They maybe want to transition from an industry. A lot of the engineers come to do business degrees because they want to go into management positions or consulting positions, and they need to kind of upskill. Then we've got people who know exactly what they want to do. They want promotion within their school, so they often choose like our online program, like part-time MBA. But I would say do research about the school. If you're thinking about, and this is my general advice to anybody who wants to do a grad degree, is think about who hires from that university, right? Who are the employers that are connected? Like, do they actually provide career services? Like, that's a major distinguishing factor for good schools. What kind of support you get outside of your academic advising, right? So those would be some of the things that I would advise. And one last tip would be talk to alumni. Talk to alumni if you're going to that school, because they're going to really give you a good insight about their experience and whether that program is good for you, or whether you should look at some other things. So I would say that those would be some of the tips that I would share.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Martina. These are awesome tips, and I hope everybody in the audience was writing those down. Okay, next up, I've got Annie again. I'm gonna move over to you for the last question here. So for Felix Payments, as a rapidly growing startup, what are the expectations of Felix Payments in terms of hiring? What does a successful candidate need to look like on paper or on screen to you?
Yeah, great question. So for us, because we are a startup ourselves, we focus on people who want to learn, who have that eagerness and that enthusiasm to kind of take control of their own career. If you want to do well, that's great. If you want to just cruise along, as Martina mentioned, you can do that, but you're not really going to get a lot out of it. The more you put into your own learnings, the more you're going to get out of it. So yeah, if you're really enthusiastic, and if that shows during an interview, that makes me happy. I like people who have a bit of enthusiasm about them.
Awesome. Wow. I feel like I've learned so much just now about the hiring process and company growth at Felix and UBC Sauder and PDFTron. This is fascinating. I love it. Next, I'm going to open up the floor to questions from our audience. So if you would like to ask a question, you can type your question into the chat box, or you can raise your hand and I will invite you on screen to ask your question to our guest speakers here. All right, and I'm just going to check the chat, see if we've got any questions coming in. So feel free to ask questions, surrounding hiring, interviewing. You can ask about company culture. Okay, we've got a hand raised. We've got Peyton. All right, so come on screen. Welcome back.
Hello. Sorry, what were you saying?
Go ahead. You can ask your question. I was just going to say, is your question directed to all three speakers, or do you have someone in mind?
Whoever wants to take a shot at it is welcome to.
Perfect.
What is the most common mistake that you see interviewees make that you just see constantly more than 50% of the time? It might not be a dingable offense, but what is one thing that you see that people can improve on easily?
Excellent question.
I can take a first stab, and then Louisa and Annie, if you wanted to. So Peyton, exactly actually what we did just right now, the pitch. Tell me about yourself. Oftentimes people try to squeeze in the entire resume in there instead of telling us a story. So I will say to all of you who are job seekers, your pitch, your 30-second pitch, tell me about yourself, is basically for me your movie reel, and you need to convince me that I want to learn more about you, or am I just going to go through the questions just kind of like, okay, I check the boxes. So make sure that tell me about yourself. That's pretty much the question that every organization is asking, and you need to be a master storyteller. So I don't want to only, because if you reiterate your resume, you are boring me. I need to know a little bit more about you, who you are, and why are you interested in us? And it needs to be weaved into a comprehensive story. So I want to know a little bit more of your personality and whether I would want to work with you. So usually one of the weakest answers that I get from majority of the candidates, or what I've seen students even that I've been coaching and alumni that I've been coaching, is their tell me about yourself, and iterations of that are crap. And I'm just going to be very blunt. So that's going to be something that people need to really work on. So that actually is going to hit it, and people will want to know more. They're going to become curious about you. So Louisa, Annie, over to you.
For sure. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Funny story. I did an interview once where it was an hour long, but the candidate spent 20 minutes walking me through the resume. And 10 minutes in, I already want to stop that person. But I was like, yeah, Peyton, I mean, another sort of tip that I would recommend to not do interviews, and this definitely applies for people who are switching jobs as well. I would say it's never talk down or speak poorly about your previous job or the people you've worked with. I think that reflects very poorly on candidates who do that, even if they had not a great time. It's never a good thing to say it so bluntly like that. If there were difficulties, it's better to position it as, you know, a tough situation you overcame, a challenge, and as to why. And I think a lot of people actually do it subconsciously as well, where they don't watch what they are messaging or saying, and they're not positioning it properly. You know, sometimes you might get questions where people ask, oh, why are you leaving your previous job? Or even something as, what was a challenge you had, or an aspect of the job that you didn't like before. And that's where the pitfalls can happen, where suddenly people start talking negatively about their employer or company, and it's just not good to hear, because then to us that feels like, oh, you might do the same thing about us later on, and that's definitely someone we don't want to hire.
Good tips. Annie, did you have anything to add?
Yes, to add to that, if you're going to interview for a company, please do your research. The amount of people that I've had on a call who have attempted to tell me what Felix does without Googling, I mean, the answers are entertaining for sure. Always do your research. 5 minutes on a company website can be enough. But yeah, I can't stress that enough. Just please do your research.
All excellent tips. Thanks. Okay, I see we've got a hand raised by Grace. Grace, did you want to come on screen and ask your question?
Oh, hi. It's really glad to be here and have the advices from the all of this HR expertise. Thank you very much first.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And I have a question. You really want to get advice from the HR expertise, like Martina just mentioned. The culture is really important, and really if the candidates say no, I have no question about that. So it seems like they don't have a passion and curiosity for this company. But my question is like, for the company the candidate is applying for, mostly not like UBC, so famous, everybody know, working there is very excited. So mostly is they don't feel familiar with that. So how does the candidate will be very passionate and excited about the culture and what for this company they never know before, only by the research they just know the candidate just know very surface about the company. And how does it very curious and very excited for this company? Yeah, that's my question. And it is very important for the HR for the hiring. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question, Grace. Did anyone want to take a stab at answering Grace's question? I feel this is more about how do you find like a passionate candidate, or am I off on the wrong track?
I think I understood it, that there were a couple of questions in there, Grace, so I'm going to try to unpack it a little bit more. I think that one of the questions is, if you don't know what the culture is, how do you find out, and then how do you ask about it? So my tip would be, yes, of what Annie said, you need to go into company websites. A lot of the companies have, what's our vision? What are our values, right? Like, and so in the interview, then you can ask and say, okay, I read this in your on your website that these are your values, right? Like, let's say that one of the values is responsibility, right? Or rigor, or whatever it is. And so you can ask them, okay, can you give an example of how does this manifest in your organization? Because then you're going to learn, is it just a lip service? Or is it something that you, they can really, the panelist who is interviewing you, or the people who are interviewing you, are able to give you concrete examples of how some of these cultural things are manifesting in the organization, and you can see for yourself whether you are interested in that, or it doesn't really kind of entice you, right? So that would be first thing of what Annie said, doing that research and then following up on that with the questions. And then the second piece, I would say that if you want to learn about the organizations, I would say again, and bring up that informational interview and coffee chat piece, don't just wait until the application come up. You know, LinkedIn for all of you is an extremely important part of your job search. So I would say follow the companies that you are interested in working for. Spend a little bit of time. Oh, this is really interesting. I would like to work for PDFTron. So what are they posting on LinkedIn? Who are the people that I know that are working for them? And you can reach out to them and you can have those conversations to learn about them a little bit more before you apply. And that also gives you a bigger chance of a referral. And I don't know whether Annie or Louisa, you have employee referral programs, but a lot of the organizations are now putting them in place where talented people are hard to find, and employees actually get money from referring good candidates to a job. And if the people pass probation, so there's a lot of different ways. But main tip out of all of this is your interview should not be the first step or where you are learning about the organization. There should have been multiple steps before you're interviewing for organization to actually know about some of these things, and you can validate. Yeah. And I don't know if I've answered a little bit, but anybody wants to add to that?
Really helpful. Thank you.
Great question.
To add to that, sorry.
No, go ahead, Annie.
You've got websites like Glassdoor, for example, where employees can actually put their own comments on what it's like to work for a company. So I would highly recommend, before you even apply, as Martina said, do your research, go on Glassdoor, have a look at what people are saying, and then use those particular comments as questions to ask during the interview process. And you're going to get a real sense as to what the company's like, depending on what employees have to say.
Great. Okay, I think we've got another question from Sharif. Sharif, do you want to unmute your microphone and hop on screen? Or you don't have your camera working, so never mind.
Yeah, no worries. I do have a question for as an interviewee. So obviously there's going to be a lot of applicants for certain positions, some that have multiple years of experience and some that don't have experience but are willing to learn. And so my question is, as an interviewer, in terms of preference, is it more like, this is based on experience. I had an interview where I did a bunch of research on the company and I was preparing for the interview and I did all that. And one of the obstacles that came about was the fact that I didn't have experience in the field. And so I was told that, I need to gain experience in that field in order for me to apply for this position. And so it kind of put me in a bit of a limbo here. I'm just curious, in terms of application wise and interview, is it more favorable for the person to be hired who has, like, say, 10 years of experience in a certain position versus a person who has no experience but is trying and is very eager to learn and kind of go from there?
Good question.
I'm happy to go first on this one if you like.
Sure, go ahead, Annie.
Felix actually do hire people with no experience whatsoever when it comes to software development. So, we take a look at someone's ability to want to learn, someone's eagerness, how much research they've done on the company, what they've done in their spare time to kind of prepare themselves for the type of role that we look for. And as long as you're willing to learn, that's all that we really care about. We don't care about how many years of experience you have, because we're going to teach it all to you anyway, no matter if you've got 10 years or 0. So you need to just do your research on the right companies. Everyone's got their own hiring process, and everybody's going to be looking for the different types of candidates, depending on what their business needs. So it's about finding the right company for you rather than just thinking that it's your fault, because it's not your fault. It's just the company's expectations or requirements at the time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well. And what Annie says is a great point. It's really about finding the right company and the right role for yourself. And from our perspective, even at PDFTron, because a lot of these things, especially, if we look at corp dev or finance or whatever it is, it's not rocket science, right? Everything we can teach you on the job and on the spot. So having really that passion and interest and that willingness to learn and, be able to take in feedback while we flexible is much more important to us. So the overall attitude and willingness to take responsibility and ownership of the work.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, is a lot of the times we see candidates that they forget that they've got transferable skills. So they just kind of like concentrate, oh, I don't have experience in this field, but they forget that they've got internships or different jobs before, and they can relate to some of the things that they are going to be doing in a new job to something that they've done before, right? So project management can be very similar, in one company to another, or, if you've got certifications or you've done a short consulting stint for someone, sometimes people forget to bring these things up and they forget to kind of pitch themselves and sell themselves because they're like, oh, I don't have the experience. And the other piece is that it often happens that it's very situational. Like to give you an example, we recently had a situation where we were hiring for a business development manager for data analytics portfolio. And it's a very, very hard job to hire for because we needed somebody who's got data analytics knowledge, and we would teach them, the business development piece. They just they just needed to know how to build relationships. But when we actually said that we need to have X years of experience, we realized that on the market, we are not competitive because these people are getting paid 140,000 plus. And we as a school could not pay for that. So we actually had to lower our standard. And then we started to look for a unicorn that we don't care if you don't have experience or if you've got a year of experience, but we will develop you. We will invest in you and we will develop you as a person. So sometimes the situation in a company changes. So it's, as Annie said and Louisa said, it's not on you, but sometimes it just depends on the situation of what the organization needs at that time, given the circumstances. So timing and luck in job search play a role as well, I would say, and transferable skills.
I hope that answers your question, Sherry.
It does, yeah. Thank you so much for answering the question.
Okay, next up we've got Sherry. You want to come back on screen, Sherry?
Hey, I'm here. Yeah. My question is, as Martina said, if you are really passionate about to get a job in a particular company, we have to do information interview as well as coffee chat, right? Can you please brief about like what does information interview? What does that includes? It includes only the company research, or like chatting with the employers in that company through LinkedIn, or like doing a virtual coffee chat in LinkedIn. And one more question, after the interview, face-to-face or like a virtual interview, is it necessary to have a follow-up email for getting a prior chance to that position? Is it necessary? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay. So basically the informational interview and coffee chat is the same thing. Some people call it informational interview, some people call it coffee chat, and you can do it in multiple different ways. You can cold reach out to someone through LinkedIn. You can ask someone for a warm introduction if you've got a mutual person in common. You can phone and send an email. There are a variety of ways of how you can get in touch with people. And basically the best analogy that I would use for you is it's like asking for direction. So you basically, let's say you saw a job posting and Annie is nodding. So I would love to hear maybe for her to add some color into this after, and maybe she's done many of those before. And it's basically kind of like you can get really good information, insider information from people that are not posted anywhere, right? As Annie said, if you go to Glassdoor and you will see some interesting stuff, if you go on LinkedIn and you will see some interesting stuff, you can actually ask about all of those things in that coffee chat. And you are basically building a rapport with the person. It doesn't matter, right, who it is, whether it's from the team that you're interested in or somebody in HR, but you are basically putting yourself out there, because what's cheaper for the organization? They don't want to go through thousands of resumes. If Annie or Louisa are going to have 10 really good candidates that are going to be referred, well, those are the candidates probably that they're going to be interviewing, right? Because they know that they've been referred by someone, or they already know about them and an interesting opportunity came up, right? So I would say that that's for everybody. The informational interviews in coffee chats, and especially in North American market, they're endless. You're going to be doing them for the rest of your career. It's not like, oh, I'm going to get the next job and then I'm done. You're going to be doing them for the rest of your life. I do them, my staff does them, we all have to do them if we want to progress in our career. And then, if I understood correctly, the second question was about follow-up, like a thank you email after the interview or in a coffee chat. For both cases, it's a must. If you've been interviewed, or if somebody gave you a gift of their time, you absolutely have to follow up and send them a thank you, or kind of follow up on what you've learned, and especially if you want to build it into a warmer relationship. But I'm not sure if that was the second one. So I don't know, Louisa, Annie, what you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, so to add on to that, coffee chats, I love them. If you want to show you're enthusiastic, definitely organize a coffee chat. 15 minutes of someone's time, if I don't have to advertise a job role, go through the many resumes, go through the many hours of interviewing, it saves my time. So if I've got somebody who's super eager, wants to have a meeting with me, wants 15 minutes of my time to learn about the company, to get inside a scoop, I'm definitely, more interested in that candidate. As Martina said, to the follow-up email as well, absolutely. As a candidate, you always expect that recruiter or that HR person to come back to you with a follow-up, whether you're successful or not. I always expect the same from the candidates. Not only have I given them my time, but they've given me theirs. So it needs to be a two-way street there when it comes to going back to candidates and candidates coming back to recruiters.
I hope your question was answered, Sherry.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thanks for asking. Our next question, we've got an interesting question in the chat from April. April, did you want to come on screen and ask your question?
Sure, I can. So my question is, I've got to the interview phase. They find me highly qualified. However, they're going with someone fresher. How do you combat that? That is seems to be the thing I'm dealing with the most because of my age. I'm 52. So they tend to want to go with the younger candidates. So how do you get past that piece?
That's a very good question. Very important.
Jumping in here to talk about that. I would go back to the company that decided to go with someone fresher and ask them how they came to that decision. Sometimes what appears on the outside as age discrimination could be something else entirely. It could be that the other candidate had, other skill sets that they could utilize, or, it could be that, there was they were more eager to learn. So it may not be that it was your age, it could have been something else. So I would always ask for feedback and be persistent about that if they don't come back to you.
Okay. Any
other add-ons for that from Louisa or Martina?
April, I do have to say that ageism is a real thing. I don't want to downplay that it isn't, because it is a real thing. And I think that in this case, especially so they get to know you before your interview could help. So I think that for you, the strategy that I would apply would be really go for those coffee chats, interviews, so people kind of like that you're going to be basically a shoe-in when the right opportunity comes. So really kind of like making your way through the network for the organizations, because I think that showing them your value, your wisdom, your experience, and everything that you can bring to the table might not shine throughout the interview process necessarily, because it's such a short period of time.
Yeah.
But I would say that I would definitely apply that strategy of getting to, you know, multiple people in an organization, talking to them and really communicating all of the value that you have. But yeah, it's a real thing. I really do think that a lot of I've encountered it with our alumni that it does happen to people.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, April.
Yep. So I kind of meant that.
Perfect.
So when we are writing the applications, right? So that's the pre-interview stage. So how do we segregate our application basis on certain things that we can maybe just kind of utilize into our writing, maybe in a cover letter or into our resume? So could you just shed some insight over it so that we can just try it and use it during the filing of the application?
Great question.
Happy to go first on this one. One thing that, you know, I would highly recommend is use LinkedIn and resumes as a collective application, shall we say. You know, have LinkedIn super detailed with things like your, you know, skill sets and your recommendations and that sort of thing, and then have your resume that can reflect that information on LinkedIn. The reason for that is a lot of companies are now moving away from the standard resume and moving towards the digital resume, which is LinkedIn. So having a really, really detailed LinkedIn profile and then having a complementary resume will really, really work in your favor when it comes to applying and having that information.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting, Annie brought up the fact that companies are moving towards digital resumes, because that's actually what we're doing at PDFTron as well. Of course, we have our traditional route where you hand in your resume application, but a lot of the applicants we receive nowadays is actually just a LinkedIn application where they click the button and it comes through into our system. So having that detailed LinkedIn profile and really supplementing it with the resume is sort of like it's a double-edged sword where it really complements things very well. And I know for Annie, you mentioned the cover letter as well. So for me personally, I don't place as much emphasis on the cover letter, but what I do like to see is maybe just a brief paragraph or so as to why you're interested in the company, what caught your eye, and especially if you're in you know, changing different roles, really just understanding that switch and really what's driving the passion behind the application.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, because I totally agree with what Louisa and Annie said, 90% of the employers that we work with are using LinkedIn to verify kind of information, to see how active you are there, what your skill set. Do you have any referrals from your past employers or peers if you worked on projects? That's for sure. One thing for your resumes and stuff, I know many of the employers actually will throw your resume straight out if it's got grammatical errors and inconsistencies, especially for some, you know, certain jobs. So they will not look at, I know that sometimes people get upset about that, but, you know, have somebody check your resume as well. And then here is a little bit of a kind of like a cheeky tip, I'd say, for people. All of you probably have seen the word cloud system, like, you know, tech platforms like Wordle, where you can basically, how you can actually see whether what you're communicating on your resume or on your LinkedIn and the job description that they want, plug in both of them separately into a word cloud and see what words are coming out for your resume and your cover letter and what's coming out in the job description. And it's a very quick and dirty way to say, wait a minute, if the recruiter is looking for hot words on my resume and on my LinkedIn, and my resume is not communicating that, I'm not going to get picked by the file. So you need to make sure that you've got some of those really things that they're looking for. And Wordle or word cloud platforms are really good and quick way to have the little check-in whether it's working for you.
That's very interesting. I've never heard of this platform before, Wordle.
Yeah.
This is new for me. Sounds like a lot of fun.
There's multiple of them, and it's a really quick way to kind of like check whether you got the hot words that the employer is looking for on your resume.
Okay.
Martina, can you please spell it up? I'll just note it down.
RDLE. If you just put it in Google, like word cloud platforms, there's multiple of them depending on what computer you're working on. And then you can just kind of like, a lot of them are free and you can just plug it in to have a quick check.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you so much.
It's best to have certain keywords in your application.
Yeah. If the company is looking constantly, like if the word project management or flexibility is in their job description, and when you look in your resume and none of that comes out, you have a problem.
Okay, good to know. Good tip. Thanks for asking that, Varanya. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Our next question comes from Moayad. Did you want to jump on screen and ask your question that you popped in the chat? Hi, thanks for joining us today.
Hi. I graduated in 2020 summer, so just as the pandemic started. And I went back to Saudi Arabia during that time. And at that time, there wasn't many job opportunities, but recently in chemistry, there've been a lot of job opportunities and I've been applying, but I haven't gotten anything back. Like I haven't gotten interviews. And I wonder, when I'm applying, I'm putting that I'm a resident of Saudi Arabia. And I'm wondering how much does that hurt in terms of applying for jobs in Canada?
And you mentioned in the chat, you have an open work permit, right?
Yeah, I do have I have a postgraduate work permit.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And I'm a chemistry major.
I've been in your exact position, having to go through that myself. This isn't the most professional thing to say, but you might need to change your current location. If you're looking for a job in Canada and you don't reside in Canada yet, put moving to Canada or put recently relocated to Canada. Sounds strange, but honestly, a lot of companies need people within the country, especially if it's not a remote position. And it may be that they have agreements in place with other providers where they can't take people from certain locations. So changing that on your resume will certainly open doors.
Good to know.
I would agree with that, Moyad. I'd say kind of like either in transition or put something in there, and even mention that you've got like open work permit, right? So because some of the employers, if you have one year work permit, are really worried, and because they don't want to have such a high turnover. So it is a hurdle for you to get a role here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I just also wanted to mention to you, Moyad, we do have an immigration panel coming up on November 4th. It's also located in Eventbrite. So if you want to hear more about finding work in Canada and listen to some immigration experts, feel free to come and join our panel on November 4th. Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, our next question comes from Wyman Dave. Dave, did you want to jump on screen and ask your question to the panel speakers?
Yeah, hello there. I have a couple of observations, listening to the conversation in Q&A sessions just now. One, I put it in the chat, which is, I have similar experience with April, who, asked a question that they went with a candidate with a fresher experience, but what I experienced is they never give me a reason for not picking me. They always just mention that they go with another candidate. That's it. And even if I try to reach out and ask the hiring manager for what went wrong with my application, or what are the reasons for picking another candidate so that I can improve in my next opportunity, I never got back. So I'm kind of stuck because a lot of the job descriptions that I apply for, I know I'm qualified and I have extensive experience in those things, but I just cannot get any interviews. So I'm not sure if that's has to do with, being a returning resident, being away for many years, and now I come back. But they just don't think that you belong to here, or even if you're a Canadian citizen. Or I actually, the second observation is just listen to the previous attendee saying that they didn't put the location in Canada. I did all of that. So my profile shows that I'm in Canada. I can legally work in Canada. A Canadian resident, all that. But still, nothing. Just no positive feedback on all my applications.
All right, excellent question. Did anyone want to take a stab at that? Any advice for women?
I can take a first stab. As I mentioned before, Dave, if you are sending your application just in the ether with hundreds of other applicants, if the company already has a few referrals or they already got like promotion from within, it's very hard. And it's a normal practice of the organization, from what I've seen, that if it's just kind of like at the stage where you didn't get an interview, they just send a centralized message to everybody, because you can get 200, 300 applications for a job, and it's just a lot of the organizations don't have capacity. I know that we don't, right? We do provide feedback to people who make it to interview stage, but that doesn't seem to be okay. So I think it's very similar to what I said to April, and landing in Vancouver is hard. I want to be realistic about that. It can take almost a year to 2 years for people who are either returning or international to land if you are just applying. So here is an interesting stat. 60 to 70 applications that you send in just generally online, you get one job interview. So that's 60 to 70 jobs that you have applied for. If you do 12 informational interview, you get one offer. So where are you going to spend your time? So I think that in North American market, people cannot underestimate of contacting the companies, talking to people, because usually the hiring managers don't have time to provide everybody feedback. And you are competing probably with hundreds of other people. So I would say that this is what you're encountering. It's totally normal. And if it's not working for you, you have to change your strategy.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so it looks like from your interesting stat that I should be getting 2 by now.
Okay, you applied for so many, yeah.
Yeah, so many, yeah. Indeed.
Mm-hmm. So, Dave, absolutely. And if you want to kind of like talk about it a little bit more, like feel free to, record my name and reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I can talk to you a little bit more about the strategies that you can apply, kind of like in talking to people. The other thing is that I would advise to everybody, it is a paid resource, but it's one of the best resources that I've ever encountered. It's a course that's called LinkedIn Guys. I think it's about $100 US. That you would have to pay to get that course. These are guys who actually developed, they've done a lot of LinkedIn learning. They used to work for LinkedIn. And I have seen so many of the success stories. We actually pay for it for all of our students, but it's one of the best resources I have ever seen of how to utilize LinkedIn to its full potential without paying for LinkedIn Premium. $100 course or $500 dollars LinkedIn Premium a year. So I would highly recommend to all of you, look at that course, Google it. It's called LinkedIn Guys. And I think that you can get a lot out of that, Dave, of how to really leverage getting a job.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. I was going to ask if there's a recording or link that I can watch back on this session.
This video, yeah, so this panel today is actually being recorded, and it will be provided on YouTube in the next 2 weeks or so.
Awesome. I'll reach out to you guys then.
Yeah, you can also reach out to me, Dave. I can provide you like with links and some help for making your resume stand out.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions coming in? All right, well, while we're waiting for someone to add a question to the chat, I've got some questions of my own here. Let's talk about company culture. How would you describe your company cultures?
I'm happy to go first with this one. I love talking about company culture.
Yay.
You know, we here, you know, the entire company, you know, has an added interest in diversity and inclusion. You know, we want to hire, you know, the right people for the right role, but also focusing on where we're lacking as well. So, you know, we have come up with our values to kind of support that. So, you know, not only do we have, you know, ping pong tables and you know, the standard stuff that any business would have, you know, we have an added interest in collective agreement, shall we say, when it comes to things like diversity, inclusion, you know, what we want the business to look like, you know, 6-12 months down the line. If we get everybody on board with that when we start, then, you know, everybody kind of puts in the effort to make sure that we're reaching our company goals as we get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one as well, because I do think it's an interesting topic, especially with COVID happening over the past 2 years. It's really gotten more apparent that as people are working remotely, company culture and how to keep that sustainable and how to keep the culture up is so important. And you know what we found at PDFTron is a lot of the times it always comes back to open communication and transparency. That's very strong in our company culture. Our doors are always open to everyone, and it's really the open communication that has helped us throughout COVID, and that we're able to still stay connected with each other. And alongside that, our company has actually decided to be remote forever. We've kept our headquarters in place, but for people who want to work remotely, we are completely flexible to that. And it's also, I think it does speak to how strong that we are able to maintain our culture and really keep up that teamwork and that just that feeling of collaboration with everyone.
Very similar for us. It's like, if I had to describe our culture, and especially in our team, it would be supportive and collaborative. Like, we know that, you know, student is our client and they've been going through a lot, and so has our staff. So it's funny enough, that was actually a little exercise that I did with my staff, kind of like, how would you describe our culture? And it was interesting because they said supportive was number one thing, but they would like us to be a little bit more collaborative. So we are, you know, kind of like trying to make sure that that's going to happen. And as Sauder, it's definitely values driven. It's values based, because we want to, you know, develop leaders out there who are going to make good and ethical decisions. So definitely looking at that through that lens of responsibility and rigor and respect for everybody. Those would be a big one. And I would say that, you know, one important thing that's important for me that I always look at is I am not aligned with the notion of hiring for fit. And I know that a lot of organizations talk about that. I hire for enhancement. I want the people who are going to join our team to enhance the culture rather than fit the culture. So that is an important aspect for me, because I don't need a room full of the same people. I want to have, as well, Annie mentioned, a lot of diversity, and diversity not only in gender, race, but diversity of thinking and diversity of experience. So we always do quite a bit of analysis before we hire new people. What are the skills that we are missing? What are some of the things that, you know, we need to hire for strengths, right? Because everybody brings different things to the table. So we are quite, I'd say, practical about things. So, but I would say that we definitely hire from a cultural perspective for enhancer rather than for fit.
That's really good to know. And thanks for sharing a bit about your company cultures at PDFTron and Felix and UBC Sauder. I think, we've got one more question coming in from Grace. Grace, did you want to come on screen again and ask your question? So I'm taking final questions now. If anyone has a final question for our speakers, feel free to jump on. So Grace, you're next.
Oh yeah, my question was like when we've been in the interview, during the interview, we been asked about the salary expectation. So what would be the best answer or any range compared with the current salary? Thank you.
I'm happy to go first with this one. So salary expectations is always an interesting topic. You know, I've had people ask for 20 grand more than market value. And when you tell them that you can't offer them 20 grand more than market value, they instantly say yes. So they're just trying their luck. I don't recommend that. If you're really unsure on what you should be asking for, do your own market research as well. Look at your years of experience, look at what other people within the industry, within the city earn as well. And that will give you a rough guideline as to what you should be asking for. Obviously, you know, you want to make sure that you're getting paid fairly as well. You don't, just because one company paid you one amount, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were fairly paying you. So always do your own research before you go into a company or even before you start applying, just to make sure that A, you can live on the amount that you're asking for, B, that it's within a fair market range, and C, you're not going above and beyond sort of the company's realistic expectations as well.
Does that answer your question, Grace?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay,
And
perfect.
when the job description saying, like, for example, they're giving like 50 to 60K. So does that mean that's the exact range? No negotiable?
Good question.
So,
any thoughts?
So we, like, for example, for UBC jobs, we go by, you know, tables. Like we've got the starting or what I'm going to call the lower range where you can start, the midpoint, and then up how high you can go. So usually they kind of like post the starting to mid, because usually we don't hire above the midpoint. Like it would have to be a really, really experienced person who can like come in and do the job from day one. So they would have educational experience and so on and so on. And as Annie said, it depends a lot on with what experience you're coming in, like how fast you will be able to kind of like get their learning curve going, right? So I'd say that Annie mentioned a really good resource before. It was the Glassdoor. You can get some really good tips in there. People do post like the salaries that they had. So that would be your, that would probably be your good starting point to kind of like do your research. But you know, the 10,000 range, it's, you know, it can be from, oh, I have zero experience to, okay, I've got a few years of experience, depending on what the employer is asking for. So I'd say you also have to read the room and kind of like, you know, see how the organization is going to respond. Because one of the things that many job seekers don't know is that some people call it negotiation, but the truth actually is that when they offer your salary, you're making a counter offer, and it's actually a completely new offer, and the employer can pull. If you go too high, you might not be even able to negotiate. So that's why the research and doing those informational interviews and having some idea of where the company can go is extremely important, because I've seen cases where people went too high and then the employer just pulled the offer completely. So you just have to be very careful about that.
Good to know.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Martina.
Thank you, Grace. Okay, I think that might be our last question for today, unless we've got any final questions. We'll take any final questions if anyone has any. Okay, well, in that case, I think I'm going to wrap up this panel for today. Annie, Louisa, Martina, it was an absolute pleasure to have you chat on our guest speaker panel today. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here. I know Mondays are always so busy, so thank you so much. And if anyone is looking for work, check out Felix Payments, UBC Sauder School of Business, and PDFTron's hiring pages. Links, there are some links in the chat, I think. If not, I'll put some in the chat. Don't forget to join us next month on November 22nd for our next guest speaker panel with Hootesuite, We've also got Spare Labs and Traction on Demand joining us. And for those of you outside of Canada and wondering how to find work in British Columbia, join us on November 4th for our immigration guest speaker panel series. And we will have some immigration lawyers and registered Canadian immigration consultants join us from Sasson Ing Law Center and Can Do Immigration Services and Walrus Immigration and Citizenship Services. So you can also shoot me an email with any questions to events@BCJobs.ca. This panel today is being recorded and will be provided on YouTube probably in the next 2 weeks. So you can also watch again and grab any information from this or shoot me an email. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you, Louisa, Martina, and Annie.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great rest of your week and see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the seminar. Pleasure meeting.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Take care. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.